Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching the Salty Sea, and I am here with a guide for all things Monsta-Killaz. That is the new Cruel Boys warband that came out a couple weeks ago. We've got everything. I'm going to do a battle report, a full guide, and some painting showcase too. So to get started, let's get into a quick battle report with them. I did the mission called The Most Dangerous Game. You can see this in my title pack. I made a video about it that I will link down below. I edited the mission based on some experience I had playing with it. I wanted to see if we pushed these hammers back to 7 and 5 inches instead of 8 and 6, get them a little further away. And then I also flipped reinforcements just to see what that would feel like. So I just put the shields on opposite sides next to the daggers. Otherwise, essentially, it's the same as this mission, which I've played quite a few times, and I think a lot of folks have played at this point. The lists are Dark Oath Savagers running 1 box plus a Spheranx, and Monsta-Killaz running 2 box with Monkey Spam, which I'm extremely excited about. This is, in my opinion, one of the pinnacles of Warcry, is when you're running these bespoke factions, but upgraded enough to where they can compete with AOS factions. I really like that, and I really like the dynamic it creates. So let's get into it. Here is the Monsta-Killaz Monkey Spam lineup. Here you've got the glorious Beast Knob in the middle, and then double Monkey on each side here. One with a harpoon to help them out, and a really sweet warband. Here you've got the Mindstealer Spheranx running the show for a Dark Oath Savagers warband. I love that model. In the middle, you've got the Slaughterborn and the Wizard, and then a bunch of the mid-range guys on the left here. And now we are set up for round 1. We've got the Slaughterborn and the Wizard on one side, and the Spheranx really holding it down on its own on the other side, opposite of the Beast Knob. The Beast Knob is protecting a Clutch of Grot here with the Flogga right behind. And then, of course, on the other side, you've got double Monkey and the Harpoon. Can't get any more exciting than that. Ready for round 1. So this mission works by having each side mark a fighter each round on the other side to be hunted and then try to take them down. And so the Beast Knob marked the Spheranx and then came to try to shoot it off the ledge here in the middle of round 1, and actually didn't hit with any attacks, but did make it fall with a fall check. So at the end of round 1, we've got 2 big fights set up. One is the Slaughterborn sandwiched by 2 monkeys. He has put 16 out of the 18 onto one of them, but they've got backup. And then the other fight is going to be the Spheranx versus the Beast Knob in the center here, with a few peripheral fighters kind of supervising from the ledges. It'll be interesting to see how these develop as the reinforcements come in. So like I just mentioned, at the beginning of the round, once we determine initiative, each player picks one enemy fighter to be the hunted fighter and scores based on basically the size and importance of that fighter. And the Dark Oath marked the Clutch of Grot, which is the tiniest thing on the Monsta-Killaz side. And the Monsta-Killaz, they are all about killing monsters. I really wanted to set them up against a warband that had a really big monster type thing, not an actual monster because those sometimes make games less fun, but something monster-y. And so they marked the Spheranx right away. I really like either marking very easy targets or very hard targets early. Sometimes when you mark a hard target, you can change how aggressively they play with that target, and you also just remind yourself that you can't win this mission by just being afraid of their scariest fighter. You have to try to score those points. And so you can kind of force yourself to play correctly by marking a scary fighter in this mission. Otherwise, most of the round was spent getting into position. The monkeys were very impressive in this one, sort of flying all the way across the board and forcing the issue on a fight, and then not dying. That Slaughterborn did 16 damage, which is incredible and certainly more than it was favored to in just one attack. But that wasn't able to kill that monkey. So So monkeys just doing their job of just being very fast and being able to not die once they get to where they go. And we are setting up for 2 fights the rest of the game, which is going to be pretty exciting. Let's take a look at how it develops in round 2. So here we see the beginning of round 2 with reinforcements coming onto the board. Monsta-Killaz are splitting their monkeys, one to help out in each fight to make sure that one, they win the fight on the bridge there, and then the other one can come in to try to hunt that Spheranx if needed. And here we've got the 3 mid-range fighters on Dark Oath chasing the Clutchagrat. And it's like the dice knew that this was Monsta-Killaz's debut with an incredible roll to take out the Slaughterborn after he had been terrorizing the monkeys around him. Really incredible by the Harpoon. And here in round 2, we can see the fight on the left was a total bloodbath with Dark Oath taking out 2 monkeys but losing their leader for their troubles. We got a couple chaff models fighting still, but the one on the right is still developing. One Dark Oath has fallen. Otherwise, there's a lot getting ready to happen with the Bala Boy and the Proven both having taken quite a bit of damage so far. So for clarity, at the beginning of round 2, Dark Oath had marked one of the monkeys that they ended up taking out, and then Monsta-Killaz marked the Slaughterborn because they had both monkeys sort of straddling it. The Monsta-Killaz are now up 2-1 from taking out the leader. You get 2 points for taking out a leader, which is pretty good. And I think there were definitely some turning points in round 2. There were 2 really lucky rolls for the Monsta-Killaz that could potentially decide the game. One was a 13 damage Rip It Out from a Harpoon after they had already won initiative, allowing the monkey that was almost dead to go attack the Dark Oath leader and deal 8 to it. So between those 2, that was enough to take him down. And then they also had a 12 damage attack from the Bala Boy's Flogga onto a Glory Seeker that just one hit killed it. That's 3 crits, which is just incredible luck there. But you can do it. I mean, that's the point of that model, is to crit fish and just hope with that 1/4 profile, but with 5 attacks that you're giving yourself a chance to roll 6s, and that really worked out. So those definitely gave an advantage in the game, but it certainly wasn't over at this point, as you'll see in round 3. Dark Oath had already marked the Bala Boy for this round, so the Spheranx takes it off the board, and then in what might have been a mistake, it comes down and ties up both the Beast Knob and the Clutchagrat so that the Beast Knob can't go kill that Proven. Things would be set up for the Proven to wail on the Beast Knob, however, the monkey then responds by running up and tying up the Proven. So then at the end of round 3, almost everything on the left side fight has been taken out. There is just one little chaff battle going on over here. And then in the main fight, we see the monkey died for its troubles, but it kept the Beast Knob at full strength, and it was able to do 28 damage to the Spheranx. Now, some of that had been done previously, but it's still a pretty incredible output, and I think is the reason why I wonder if the Spheranx move was a mistake, but that's, for history to judge. Otherwise, we are setting up a pretty big sort of battle royale where initiative will matter a lot. And there you can see the Proven took out the Clutchagrat, scoring a point for Dark Oath. So Dark Oath Savagers end the round up 3-2, but in a really terrible position going into round 4 because of this move of the Spheranx taking out the Flogga, but then saving the Proven, which had been marked by Monsta-Killaz, saving the Proven and just running into the Beast Knob, taking 28 damage because the Spheranx has been marked. If it goes down, it gives up 3 points. And so that's going to be a little bit scary. I think the expectation there was to take a lot less damage, but you've got to know when you do that if you get unlucky, you got unlucky. That's no good. Because also then the monkey then just runs 12 inches to engage the Proven, stop it from wailing on the leader. The ideal thing for Dark Oath would be to mark the Beast Knob and then kill it for 2 points next turn and have 5 points. And that would have been really tough for Monsta-Killaz to get through. Instead, they do take out the monkey, but they don't get to do damage to the Beast Knob. And now if they don't win initiative next round, Monsta-Killaz just get to take the game. So let's see real quick what happened. So the Monsta-Killaz end up winning initiative, and taking down the Sphinx with the Beast Knob, and then being able to essentially run away because now he's not tied up with anyone. And at this point, that essentially ends the game because there's no mathematical way for Dark Oath to actually catch up in points. So as we survey the battlefield here, everything on the left side died, including those in an exciting counter into both fighters getting taken down. The monkey runs in but just gets taken down by Conan. That was to stop any kind of miracle attacks onto the Beast Knob, who only ends up taking 11 damage and coming out fine. So it's often really fun to play rounds out, even once you know who's going to win. And that actually did end up happening, where Dark Oath was able to kill every single fighter on the Monsta-Killaz except for the Beast Knob. But that didn't end up mattering because Monsta-Killaz wins 6-4. It turned out that the Sphinx coming in at the Beast Knob was actually not that bad a misplay, because if it runs away there, the Monsta-Killaz had already taken out the Dark Oath leader. And if the Sphinx runs away, then the Beast Knob takes out that Proven and then can mark something else and take that out and win and score 5 points. And the Monsta-Killaz can't have 5 points scored on them unless the leader gets taken down. So at some point, the Sphinx did have to come in and attack the Beast Knob. Probably just the timing should not have been right then. So that's a kind of interesting little sequence there. It's probable that the real decider on the game was actually those wild rolls in round 2. And that can happen a lot. A lot of games seemingly come down to a couple decisions in round 4, but actually those ones weren't nearly as impactful as something that happened early in Snowball. That happens a lot. And it was still a really fun game. So I think it's a really good sort of sense that you can get for what the Monsta-Killaz are capable of. I thought that the monkeys that ran around the board were really useful, both offensively and defensively, at helping the Monsta-Killaz win this game. And I think that's really cool, because I did all this because I love those monkeys. So now that you've seen the Monsta-Killaz in action, let's get into more of a general guide on them. And I'm going to start by looking over their abilities, because I think a lot of what makes them special is those abilities. So the first noteworthy double is Cruel Taunt, where your leader can give -2/-2 damage to an opposing fighter. And I think it's really incredible for saving your allies when they're in group fights, when they're already engaged with something pretty scary that's going to have a pretty easy time taking them out. It's incredible, for example, even a Gut Lord doesn't kill a Neck Slicer with hit crit when it's being affected by this ability, which is amazing. And then some fighters, their damage basically goes to 0. So, -2/-2 is incredible on low numbers, but even on the highest numbers of damage units in the game, it's still really amazing. Just don't use this as an actual taunt, the way taunts are thought of in, MMORPGs or in D&D, something like that, where you're making something big and scary attack you instead of your buddies. That's going to make you a little sad, because the Beast Knob is not the tankiest fighter in the world, and it will often lose its 1v1 battles against sort of other big scary threats. So you're going to want to tie up your opponent's scariest things and then use Cruel Taunt to save the fighter that you've tied it up with, something like that. Don't think of it as, how taunts work in other games. Rip It Out is the harpoon ability that one of the Neck Slicers has. And I think it's worth just showing you a little table of how often it works. Against toughness 5 or higher, it's only a 31% chance to hit. I wouldn't use it against anything that's pretty tough. But against toughness 4, it's 56% chance. If you're okay with using coin flips for so many things, you can live that life. And then against toughness 3, it's 75% chance, which is really, really good. So I think this ability is incredible for clearing chaff. You deal damage equal to, the value of the dice, which can often be really big. And if you've done an attack ability too, you'll have the damage from that. So you can get a lot of damage at once. Doing it like 13 damage, which is what we saw in the game, and that was against a toughness 4 opponent, so it was only 56% chance to actually work, and then basically taking off the opponent's leader in one shot. That's not going to happen very often, but for a lot of things where you want to deal 5 damage to some chaff, you do an attack, you're very likely to hit. You're very likely to take out that chaff because of the little bit of damage you get with your hits, and then also the damage you get from Rip It Out, stuff like that. And it's really hard generally for these 110, 115 point models to really clear chaff, and Rip It Out gives you the ability to do that, and I think that's awesome. So both for clearing chaff or just for desperation situations, like how I used it there, those situations it can be okay too. Cruel Stabbin' is a damage buff ability that is just barely better than Onslaught, so I guess you will use it from time to time, but it's essentially a wasted slot as an ability. And I hate these because to play Monsta-Killaz optimally, you still need to keep in your mind which situations Cruel Stabbin' is better than Onslaught in and which situations Onslaught is better in. But the amount of value you get from that is so low that I don't love having those sort of situations in the game. Either way, I mean, it's fine. Just skip over reading it unless you want to really obsess over this warband. Let's take a look at the triples and quads. So a note on triples kind of in general. Ever since Rampage was nerfed, it was nerfed to be, instead of the full move, it was just the value of the dice. Low triple rolls, which rolling a 1, 2, 3 triple is about 15%, I think, of initiative rolls. The good options are a really big deal now. Like if you have a triple that doesn't care if you got triple ones or triple twos, that's a great place to be. And that just allows you to avoid having these initiative rolls that give you nothing. And that can happen, 2 or 3 times in a tournament if you don't have that option, where you get like a triple and 3 singles, but your triple is triple ones or triple twos. That can be really heartbreaking if your warband doesn't have a great sort of way to use that triple roll, right? Like you can't really rampage out of it because it's a 1. You can't really rampage with 1s anymore. If your triples are not good, that can be tough. And so that's just something I really value in warbands, and that is one thing that generally the abilities for Monsta-Killaz are amazing, but that is one thing that Monsta-Killaz lack, is their triples are very, dice dependent. So Saw 'em Up can do a lot of damage with a high triple. It doesn't really do anything with 3x1 or 3x2, but it's really nice because other than your leader, you really don't have any fighters that can crack high toughness opponents, things like Stormcast or like a Fomeroid Crusher. And Saw 'em Up is really good at doing that. I'll put the text on screen for you, but it just makes, depending on what you think your local metagame is going to be, it makes the Bone Saw a really interesting choice for a weapon option for your neck slicers. And I think a lot of people are going to get some real mileage out of it. Drum and Holler is another one that's sort of a sideboard piece. It's going to be useless in 90% of your games. It basically just creates a bubble where your opponent can't react. It's amazing with monkeys, and it's good with the flogger, the whip that the Drum and Holler guy has. But the amount of times where you're going to be willing to spend a triple to do that is really, really low, right? I would only do it if I was worried about getting countered twice, or if I was worried about some other much more effective reaction that I was also going to be playing into. Usually the really good reactions that are out there, you really want to fight against them by not playing into them as opposed to just having to power through them. Reaction or counter is one that often you have to power through and just take your damage. And that's really too bad. And that's where this is good, especially if you're playing a lot of monkeys who can be vulnerable to counter. But otherwise, it's not going to be useful most of the time. Luckily, the drummer is pretty decent on its own. 3-inch reach is really, really good. So you can absolutely just sort of play this guy with a straight face and then just save the ability for the, once in a blue moon matchups where it's actually really good. When it is good, it's going to be very good. It's just not going to be very good very often. Nasty Muggin is the quad that these guys have. It's okay. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's really, really bad, but every once in a while you'll use it, and that's fine. Let's get into the actual fighters. This is the exciting part, right? The Beast Knob is so good. I think he's amazing. I think he played amazing in the test games I've played. T4 25 wounds is often the difference between dying in a couple hits and surviving until the next round when you consider the other sorts of bespoke leaders we sort of have access to. The 21st wound on a bespoke leader is a really nice wound to have, and this one goes all the way up to 25, and 25 is a lot more wounds than 24 for a lot of different factions to deal with in terms of 24 both being a multiple of 3 and a multiple of 4. A lot of fighters kind of end at 24 when they are, counting up damage. A lot of warbands will do damage in ways that end at 24. So that 25th wound is kind of nice to have. I did say earlier that he's not the tankiest, and that is true when fighting really big, scary things. But as long as you sort of keep him away from the scariest things on the board, he is a really great threat. And if he is getting advanced onto and then he gets to attack twice, or if it's the end of the game and both fighters are already pretty wounded, he's really good at taking out those big scary threats because he has such high strength. So he can really do a lot of damage to the scariest things, to big monsters, things like that. And so, don't just YOLO him in there, but he is really good once he's kind of engaged in a situation that's a little bit to his advantage. And the Monsta-Killaz absolutely have the resources to make that work because they can, they've got multiple types of ranged attacks. They've got, different ways to jump out in front of an opponent, things like that. So make sure that you play him cleverly, but he can be really good. He also pairs a lot very well with Brugitz because of that high strength, because of that third point of damage when he attacks. So really, really solid. And the ranged attack, I often complain about fighters that have, a mediocre ranged attack and a mediocre regular attack, and they pay points for both, but the ranged attack just isn't good, and neither one is playable, so the fighter isn't playable. You need one of the two attacks to be good. And here, the melee attack is good enough that the ranged attack is just gravy, and it's nice to have. I've used it before, and it was just a great situation where I was able to walk onto a place where I could count on an objective, and then I could attack a thing that was on a different objective that I wasn't going to go walk over to anyway. So it was just like a nice way to get your full action economy there. And that's how I generally think of that ranged attack, is just kind of action economy, and that's it. But that's nice to have. It makes the warband play a little bit more fluidly. Clutchagrats, kind of interesting. On the numbers, on their points efficiency, they are probably the worst chaff in the game, or pretty close, right? 60 points is so many points to pay for something with only 6 wounds. They're so bad. They will lose in chaff on chaff battles against every other chaff that gets played. To be more expensive than a Shatterer and to have strength 2, 6 wounds, no usable ability, is just not good. The thing that they are doing is reacting, and the Monsta-Killaz reaction is pretty good. On a 3-up, you can stop basically if someone ends a move near you and you roll and you get a 5-up, you can make it so they can't move again, which is almost always useless, but is a thing they have to think about. But on a 5-up, you do 4 damage, and on anything else, even on a fail, you still do 2 damage, which coming out of a little grot is fine. Um, so the reaction actually does do something, but it's still not good compared to the reactions of most of the good chaff in the game. Or you'd rather just have the ridiculous points efficiency of chaff that doesn't even have a reaction, things like that. You'll still use it every once in a while because having access to 60-point models is one of the important things to have in the game. Now, Destruction has a lot less pressure for that because they can ally in Brugits and Boggle Eyes, which are only 70 points for 12 wounds. But if I was allying in one big thing and then one either Brugit or Boggle Eye, you could convince me to bring in, another Clutch of Grot, maybe 2 Clutch of Grots if I wanted a lot of numbers in my list, something like that. So they will just work sometimes for just making the numbers work in your warband, but they're essentially useless other than that. I think, even if you do value the reaction, I don't think it'll work really much at all in competitive environments because your opponents are generally going to be having more fighters than you. And so it's really going to be at its best in those kind of casual, like bespoke versus bespoke games. One thing, though, about the Clutch of Grot being bad, I kind of like that because otherwise, what I would be doing in this warband would just be doing 3 Beast Knobs and 6 Clutch of Grots and maybe an extra wild dice, something like that, and just going all bigs and smalls because that tends to be one of the more powerful things you can do without having to think very hard. And luckily, Clutch of Grot is bad enough that you can't really do that, which is great. All right. Now into the kind of mid-range fighters, and it is easy with this warband to fall on the trap of having everything be kind of in the middle, but a lot of these middle-y fighters are really good and bring real utility. So the first one I want to get into is the monkeys, because I really, really like them. One, they're just so charismatic. They're monkeys. Two, so they give you a lot for not that many more points compared to the actual orcs that are in this warband. They have 3 more wounds, they have 2 inches of extra move, and they have a better attack profile than any of the regular orcs. And they only cost, between 5 and 15 extra points compared to those orcs. So they give you a lot. I would say that the monkeys are the best pile of stats in the warband, and it's not really very close even. Now, the issues here are, one, you can't take too many because treasures exist. The monkeys can't pick up treasures. And so, you can't just have all monkeys all the time. Also, they are a little bit vulnerable to counter. So you probably want to have a little bit more numbers than you would have by like fully spamming monkeys. And also the monkeys don't have any abilities. So where I see them is there's a lot of really good abilities in this warband where I don't really want more than 1 or 2 fighters that are using that ability. And so, I could see wanting 1 harpoon and 1 bone hacka and maybe even 1 drummer. But I wouldn't want more than that. And so once I got to that point where I'd sort of taken 1, I'd just fill out the rest with monkeys because monkeys have better stats. And having good stats is really, really good. So that's where I would go and why I think monkeys are really valuable in this warband. Now, the quad monkey lists that I really like are not where I would go if I was sort of getting the most competitive with them, but having 2 monkeys I think is really good with these guys. Going into neck slicers, that's kind of the rank and file orcs from this warband. The first is the harpoon, which is great at clearing chaff because it can be, once it's in a place it likes to be at, it can be double attacking no matter where it is looking, right? Because it's got that 8-inch threat range, 8-inch reach to shoot 2 attacks out, to use that triple to clear chaff off of the board. Just a really powerful situation if you think your opponents are going to be bringing a lot of numbers, because it's not common to have, fighters under 140 points that really clear 65-point fighters off the board quickly, right? And this is a 115-point fighter that can reasonably expect to take out more than its points worth of chaff models over the course of a game. And that's a very nice thing to have. The Smasha is the one with the club with the nails sticking out. It is, quote unquote, the best stats of the group in terms of, I think it's the most points efficient. It's, has an okay damage output, but those stats are pretty medium, especially compared to monkeys. I mean, monkeys are 15 points more, but if all you're looking for is a pile of numbers, the monkeys give you so many more numbers on their profiles that I don't really think that the Smasha is necessarily usable. The Bone Hacka is really nice because it has that anti-stormcast nuke on it, which is really nice. So between it and the harpoon, you have those kinds of sideboard options for whatever you're going to be playing against, which is great. Finally, you get the drummer, which is another one of these middle fighters. I think that the sort of Flogga is really nice to have that 3-inch reach. Even when you're not going to use the ability, it's one of the fighters that is always kind of on the bubble for me of whether, when I'm building lists for these guys, whether I'm going to cut it or put it in. It's the last one to make the list always, or it's the hardest cut always. And I think that's just where it lives. Is it's got this interesting utility of being able to hit things from pretty far away, from having a profile that doesn't do much if you're rolling poorly, but can be completely devastating if you roll well. 5 attacks is a lot of attacks to have when you are critting for 4 damage, because you only have to get a little bit lucky. Two 6s off of an attack with 5 dice is really not that uncommon to get, and the damage really adds up when you get it. So the drummers can be good. I like them. They're definitely not my highest priority of things to put in the list, but they are definitely solid. And if your local metagame has lots of people playing, clouds of dwarves that are countering you off the board, that drummer is what you need. Let's get into some list building. And first, I wanted to give you guys my really silly quad monkey lists. The one I played in the video was a Beast Knob, 4 monkeys, a Neck Slicer with a harpoon, the Bala Boy with Flogga, and a Clutch of Grot. And this leaves you 15 points for blessings. I would probably lean towards 1 strength on the harpoon to improve Rip It Out's hit percentage. But you can also go 4 wounds on the Beast Knob, which can let it actually fight toe-to-toe with really valuable targets, whereas it currently, can't just run up and take something down that's really big. So those would be kind of the things I would be looking at if I was sort of having flexible blessings. I would essentially just look at my opponent's list and decide how much is 1 strength on the harpoon really going to help me, and if not, then I'd put the wounds on the Beast Knob. But I think you can do a lot of improvements to this. The first would be, I think, putting in a Brugit for that Clutch of Grot is just really easy. Here you can see my Iron Jaws Brugit here. I found a little list or a little sculpt on Etsy that had the same design sensibilities that Iron Jaws do, but were goblins, which is perfect for Gobapalooza that you're going to ally into Iron Jaws. So it's pretty wild what you get for 10 points with that Brugit. You get 6 extra wounds, literally double the health for 10 more points, and you get to do more damage so that you actually have an attack step with it. I think people generally underestimate the value of actually fighting with their chaff, and Clutch of Grot can't fight, so you wouldn't do that. But a Brugit can actually get in a fight, and that can be kind of nice. And then finally, of course, it's got that ability that is so powerful, so much more powerful than having these blessings here, that I think it's a pretty easy include. Then you can also swap, the Neck Slicer and the Bala Boy for a Mega Boss. I don't think that necessarily makes for a better list in every situation. You do have 1 less fighter. You do lose all of that good utility from those abilities. That Rip It Out ability can be really good in certain situations. But man, Mega Bosses are fun to play with. That's all I've got to say for that. Auric Mega Bosses are so cool. I just love them. And this list is so fun. It's just monkeys and beef. What you've got here is my actual list for them. A buddy painted up my Cruel Boys. And of course, these Iron Jaws are my own invention. So I'm going to be playing this at a lot of casual nights locally. I just think it's the funniest concept to me. I just love the monkeys. So I'm going to be playing that. But if I were going competitive, I think I would try some other things. Here's a quick second close-up of my Monkeys and Beef warband that I'm going to be playing around town. But if I was actually trying to, get into people and do more than just meme on them, I would get a little bit more delicate here. So there are 635 points of things that I think would be non-negotiable for me if I was going to say, play Monsta-Killaz and be like, this is really Monsta-Killa-y, right? You could certainly put in, Underworld's warbands and really just only have a Beast Knob if you wanted to, but I'm not sure why you would. So if I'm trying to feel very Monsta-Killa-y, I would go with a Beast Knob, 2 Gnarlwood Howlas, a Neck Slicer with Harpoon, and a Brew Git. And that would be my sort of entry point of I'm playing this core no matter what. And that's 635 points, so not too many. The first expansion you could do is with an eye towards objective play. I don't have the Brute Boss with the Boss Choppa, so I've got the Claw one here, but I would essentially play this list of a Brute Boss with Boss Choppa. I would add in a Clutch of Grot, and then I would have a second Neck Slicer with Harpoon. You are clearing chaff really, really well here because you've got the 2 different Neck Slicers. The Brute Boss can just look at an objective and say, chaff can't contest this objective. So you have a ton of play on objectives. And of course, just by having a Brew Git, you have a ton of play on kill missions too. Brew Gits, on their own give you play on kill missions, especially, putting it on the Brute Boss. You can really do explosive damage because you can do the Brew Git double, and then the Brew Boss double can get it into combat with a 4-inch radius that then it can just blow up whatever it touches. So you have a lot of really powerful options for a lot of different types of missions there. That said, I kind of like this other option better just because I think it might be just as powerful, and I kind of like the number of tools it has a little bit better, and that would be an Ardboy Boss, a Neck Slicer with Bone Hacka, and then a Brawler Boy with Flogga. The reason there is just if I'm going to play Monsta-Killaz, I want to have this smorgasbord of cool abilities, which is, in my opinion, what Monsta-Killaz really achieves. I think, the original promise of Cruel Boys when they came out in the Dominion box set when AOS 3 first started was, these are the clever orcs. And Cruel Boys in Warcry, they can feel kind of clever, but I think the Monsta-Killaz deliver on that promise even better than the originals do. And so if I'm going to be playing them at a tournament, this is how I'd want to play them. I'd want to have access to all of their clever, all their clever BS, right? Because I just think that that's what would be fun with them. And I think in some ways this might be just as powerful because that Ardboy Boss is really strong. That's the Ironjaw's ally and is pretty cheap. You basically get this kind of destruction take on a Stormcast fighter with the Ardboy Boss, and that's just a really nice tool to have. And then you'd have still the Neck Slicer, Brawler Boy, and Harpoon to have different tools against different types of opponents. This expansion number 2 is more about playing your opponents than it is playing missions. And those are both 2 different, completely valid ways to approach the game. But the one I feel more comfortable recommending to people, the one I kind of am better at building these types of lists, is the first expansion. But if I were doing it, I would play the second one. So that's everything I've got on the Monsta-Killaz for Warcry. I think this is a really cool warband. As you can tell, I'm going to be playing it quite a bit over the next few months because I think it's really fun, whether it's for casual play, which is mostly where I'll be playing it, or for events. I think it has enough to it to be willing to play it competitively as well. I don't think it's going to be coming in, at the top of the meta or anything, but I do think it can hold its own in a wide variety of situations. And if you're willing to bring in a lot of crazy allies, you can absolutely do that. So I'll be making more Warcry videos in the future. Let me know if this type of faction rundown works for you in the comments. Kind of trying to incorporate a battle report with a sort of guide at the same time. Let me know if that works, and if so, I'll try it again for a couple other factions in the future. Maybe try to continue including sort of painted pictures if I can get my hands on some really nice example warbands. So until then, may all your rolls be crits.